Well, welcome to another show of My Life in Football, and I'm really sort of pleased to say joining me today, my dad will be supremely envious today about this, but we've got the one and only, the living legend, Mr. Steve Castle, joining us today, of course, manager of Royston Town. And Steve, first, I suppose, first things first, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, no, thanks very much for having me on the podcast and whatever. It's taking I think really probably towards the end of the season, it's unfortunately fizzing out a little bit for us, but we've got one more game which is Saturday, and then a little bit of break and reset and go again.
Yeah, great. Happy days. First things first, the question I always ask everybody is, how did you get involved in this crazy world of football in the first place?
Right, a long time ago. I think it was, obviously kids football, got brought up in and around Ilford, played for a couple of teams around that way that were famous around that way. Teams called Romford Royals, which had the likes of Tony Cotty in, John Cornwall, Cole Cowley, lads that had made it, sort of at a good level, especially Tony probably being the best of them all. And then a team called Rebels United, which had a similar sort of pedigree, really, just in that sort of area. Very, very competitive football. Unlike, unfortunately, what, sort of Sunday football is now. Seems like the academy seem to take them at a very, very early age, and it just sort of filters it out a little bit, really. But in my day, it was a case that sort of they still existed, obviously, for Premier League or First Division, sort of coaching or academies as it is now. But it had less sort of like emphasis on taking the kids and making and trying to mould them at very, very young ages, I mean,
what is your thoughts on that, though, Steve? I mean, before we carry on with yourselves, with the kids going into the academies. I remember when I was managing a team, as you said, like many years ago, and lad had been at Tottenham, and he'd been let go at I think at 11, and he came in to us. And I've been told, was told, oh, what a fantastic football player he was and all the rest of it. And sort of pre-season, you could just see that he was sort of like, there was nothing there. As such, he was just completely disappointed, wiped out, that he's having to be back playing with his mates almost, on a Sunday morning. And then eventually, his dad was the coach of the side. Sort of, we both sat down and had a chat with him and said, look, never say never. Just because Tottenham will let you go doesn't mean if you don't perform on a Sunday mornings that there won't be a scout there, etc., etc. Put our arms around him, and he went on to score 49 goals that season from left side of midfield. Do you know what I mean? How do you think it does affect, the kids being taken at such a young age?
Well, you've really hit on a point that is really relevant to me, and like sort of it's. I don't think sort of the care or aftercare is anywhere near good enough from all the academies, Cat 2, Cat 3, Cat 1, whatever. I think I understand why they do it. I even, agree that sort of like an early age, they should start to get the process, but to be trying to mould, professional footballers at 7, 8 years of age, I think that needs to be looked at in a more professional way, really, in as much that it's got to be fun. There's got to be as less pressure on the games as possible. I know for a fact that they're not, but sort of that's what I believe it should happen. And then probably there's cut-off points, really, where I would say probably 13, 14 that then sort of the ante goes up a little bit more, and sort of, yes, there's a little bit more sort of concentration or dedication, if you like, towards sort of being what they will want to be, but always really just having that thing that sort of it's not the worst thing in the world if they're being let go, or for whatever reason. I think, communication in everything is key. I think if if lads, girls, are released, with a full, list of information that maybe what can get better, or where they can go to rebound back into it, all the better. But I think, probably in a sort of for a short sort of answer, really, which I obviously want to give you, it won't suffice, because it's a subject we could keep going on with it. It's something I think, an awful lot of players, that have, been very lucky and played, sort of for the duration of my career. You do look back on it, and it is sort of, a sliding doors moment where, it could have happened, it could have not. And like, I know, sort of that word luck comes in, but I think good fortune does, in as much that, your pathways to get into, sort of a good level, professional football, semi-professional football. Obviously we're talking about non-league football, and I think really we're going to be really, sort of important. I feel that, sort of that pathways are going to be through good level college, non-league avenues, as well as academies. And that rebound effect, and hopefully that resilience is built within, these players that are at academies and at a young age, getting released and bouncing back, just as you described with your player there.
I mean, with yourself though, I mean, how, you was playing sort of, as you say, Sunday morning football for local teams near me. In fact, from yep. On the early days. I mean, but where did that sort of move forward for yourself?
Well, it personally, we were a very successful team, and as I say, there was a period, we won an awful lot of games and played against an awful lot of Premier League academy teams, at the same age as well, and we're beating them. And what was happening was that we were being invited to various places to train, and as long as you didn't sign associated schoolboy forms up to the age of 14, you could go where you like. So I really had a sort of a ball of a time, really. In some ways, I was at Arsenal on a Monday. I'd do the occasional Tuesday at Chelsea. I would go to Tottenham, was the main one, on a Tuesday and a Thursday, or wherever, alternate with a Chelsea thing, and always had sort of like fingers in sort of all the pies, really. But that was sort of the avenue where I went with it. And as I say, I just sort of promised associated schoolboy forms at Tottenham, but stayed there until 16. Didn't really work out. And then probably my journey really started.
That journey started at the Mighty O's.
It did, yeah. So I mean, I got I got released quite early in that first season. I don't think I was even 16. That they gave me, sort of quite a bit of notice that I wasn't no longer needed. And in fairness, it might be, we're talking about the resilience. I don't remember being too disappointed. I just remember it being probably the right thing, because I didn't think I was good enough at the time. And a confidence thing, and going into Leyton Orient, it was brilliant. I just it was lastminute.com on getting an apprenticeship. I've got to be honest. I think I actually went in there seriously. I think it was probably February or March. Played 3 or 4 games and was lucky enough to get a 2-year apprenticeship. And yeah, as I say, that's really the start of it.
What was that like though, to go into somewhere like Leyton Orient, and no disrespect to a really well sort of known club. I know they on a smaller scale maybe to Tottenham and that, but I mean it's still a big club, around the area. And what was that like for you to now be part of that mighty club?
Yeah, no, it was great. As I say, I mean, got some great memories. The club at the time was on its backside. Really, we had just come down what is now the Championship into League One, with some, some really like established pros. I was in as an apprentice. I think there was only 3 apprentices, and I think there must have been about 14 pros. And it's unheard of, really. And like sort of a couple of injuries, and even though certainly wasn't good enough at the time at 16 to go into apprenticeship, I knew I was in and around the squad for a couple of games, probably just out of necessity as much as anything else, But no, I had a really great time. The 2 years, I think if you talk to any ex-pro, their apprentice days are, sort of just so memorable. Probably can't repeat too many of them and the stories, but
Is there any you can?
But well, right, they're a little bit, yeah. I mean, ages. It was ages ago, I know, and but no, nothing that sort of completely springs to mind. But it was fun every day going in. It was bloody hard work. I mean, there was three apprentices. I particularly done all the cleaning with the boots and the changing rooms and everything like that. One done the washing, one done the cooking. That was it, just the 3 of us. But we were there till 7, 8 o'clock in the evenings, with a sort of a legend called Jimmy Allabone, who used to help out as well. And yeah, it was great times, and like it was great. It was a sound grounding for me, that's for certain, because the work and the work off the pitch. Sort of that had to be done as much as anything else. But, I was very, very fortunate. I had a lad, he's not a lad, but Dario Gradi, who was my youth team manager. And he'd just come back, he'd just come from Chelsea, spent the time with us before he went up to Crewe and made his name up in Crewe. But he's coaching still to this day. I've not seen any better. So, I was lucky in that respect to get a very, very good start.
And he bought some big players through as well, didn't he? As well, when he's gone to Crewe, he then bought out. Certainly did. It's Jones, wasn't it, as well, and a couple of
Pemberton, Thomas, yeah. I mean, like sort of David Platt. I mean, there was some massive ones. Yeah, as you say, all come through the lad. Obviously, the 2 lads that went. Can't think of the names. That one of them's on Talk Sport. The lad. They've all come through the Crewe sort of a scheme, and he was great at what he did.
So can you remember when you actually got called into that first team squad for the first time?
I can, yeah. And I played midfield for all my career, really, but it was Dario, really. He had a thought that I was a left back, which I didn't agree with, but probably looking back on it now, and as a manager now, I understand that probably putting me in at left back in the reserves in men's football, it was a bit of a buffer where, if you go into central midfield as a 16-year-old, and especially sort of in the times that I'm talking about, you'd have probably got eaten up and spat out, but played left back quite a few times, and that's where I got my opportunity to play at left back in my second year as an apprentice. So, I had a few games, certainly wasn't ready, but as I alluded to earlier on, you had squads, of 13, 14 pros and 3 or 4 apprentices. So it was a case that you went in or you got a loan out,
What was the first game, Steve?
First game was against Bradford City at home. As I say, we won. I can't remember too much about it. Probably remember the second game, which I managed, don't know how, I was left back, I don't know, and I was on the edge of the box for a corner, so I don't know what I was doing there. But I ended up scoring the winner in the second game that I played. So that was probably a little bit more memorable. But I just remember it being a bit, well, as I say, remember, it was just a haze. I just had enough about me to keep quiet, listen to people around me. There was an awful lot of advice coming my way. And probably now too much advice, but sort of just listen to what I thought was right, and try to do as least, try and make as least mistakes as possible, and sort of just progress from there, really.
Who was the first team manager at Orient at the time?
Frank Clark.
Right, it was Frank.
Yeah, and like, sort of had a, and still have, really, we have reunions, sort of every so often at Orient or at Christmas and everything like that. Got a hell of a lot of time for Frank. And he sort of took me, under his wing as such, really. Not in the early days, but probably when I was a first, second year pro, where there was a big gap between myself and like sort of out lads that were sort of like mid-20s and onwards, and I was an 18-year-old. And like, not that he'd make it obvious, but it was just sort of like, right, come on, son, you're on a level, you can be as good as this lot, and hopefully better. And always pushed me forward, and I think he made me captain at 20 as well. So now I've got an awful lot of time and an awful lot to be thankful for Frank.
Because Frank, am I right in saying Frank played under Brian Clough?
He certainly did. I don't know why, but I just had a complete link with Nottingham Forest, and because sort of I had Ian Bowyer, Trevor Francis, Peter Shilton, John McGovern. I had them all in my career that have managed me at some stages, whether an assistant manager or whatever, youth team manager. But they all had a bit of a sort of an edge to them that was all Cloughy, and there was an awful lot of experience and quality out of all of them.
But as a manager like Frank, then because we were European Cup winners medal as well, and I mean, does that show that he knew when he spoke, he knew what he was talking about?
Yeah, no, he did, and I think it was one of them. I wouldn't look at tactically, sort of being one of those that you look at it now, and probably because there's so much sort of media coverage, isn't there? And we're getting coverage of all the tactical areas and what's happening here, and everybody knows what the best way of doing it. But he knew how to win games of football. It was a reasonably direct form of football, but yeah, I think it was what everybody knew. It was probably the era, if I'm honest, that a little bit more direct football. Your Wimbledons were coming to the fore and like going through the leagues, and I think everybody was going, right, well, possibly that could be the way. And as I say, sort of there's always peaks and troughs with people's thinking of it. But I would say, the winning mentality that came from all the people I'm talking about, especially Frank, was really evident.
I mean, with that, I mean, how long was it before you moved from left back to centre mid?
Yeah, good question. I played that season in and out. Unfortunately, the lad that was playing at left back, he's no longer with us now, David Stride. He came from Millwall. He had an awful lot of injuries. I dare say he wasn't, sort of, bless him, I don't mean to be, sort of like disrespectful, but I don't think he was that, sort of keen on playing week in, week out, especially a Saturday, Tuesday. So I probably got myself about 17, 18 games, really, from probably, I would say probably November onwards. So I was quite fortunate there. At the back end of that, I do remember playing down at Bristol Rovers in midfield with Barry Silkman, and realising that that's really where I wanted to play. I did actually, sort of have enough about myself to go in and sort of like, I'd like to be, sort of considered as a midfield player, not as a left back, because I personally didn't think I was quick enough to be able to play as a left back. But I didn't actually get myself in really until not the year after that. But the back end of the season, after my debut, I did score 4 goals from midfield at Rochdale on the last game of the season. So it just left it on a nice note, gave me a really big boost, went in, thought I was going to actually start the season, but I didn't. And then, like, probably I would say about 5-6 games into it, came off the bench a couple of times, made an impact, and then I played for the rest of the season in midfield, and hopefully I done all right.
I mean, with that, Steve, when you first started playing that for the first game for Orient, I mean, what was it like family wise? I mean, all the family up there, like like you would expect maybe, and all piled in because there's seeing the son, ready to make his debut.
Yeah. I mean, like sort of me bless him, my dad lost him, sort of 2 or 3 years ago, but he was he was my biggest supporter. He literally, wherever I was playing, he was there. I don't want to discount with my mum done work. She sort of done the journey, but probably begrudgingly. A lot of the family were there for the home games, but I always remember not having the greatest of times at Birmingham, trying to get away from Birmingham on deadline day, and like it didn't happen. And seeing up in the stands and he's there. So like, they're the type of things I do particularly remember, rather than, at home, quite easy to come down and watch the game and enjoying the hospitality. It was the sort of like a reserve game up in Birmingham against Wolves where it's took him 2.5 hours. And I know he worked till 6 o'clock and left straight from work and whatever. So yeah, he was my biggest supporter by a million miles, and like I wouldn't say the rest of the family weren't, but it was his life, and he loved it as much as I did, really.
So I mean, in that first spell with Leyton Orient, I mean, is there 1 or 2 matches that sort of stick out in your mind for you, of sort of favourite matches or favourite goals as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm very proud of the fact that, sort of, as I say, just as a kid, and it came from nowhere. I've got to be honest with you, the 4 goals against Rochdale I'm talking about, it was the last game of the season. I wasn't really a regular. I scored 1 goal at half time, and then something clicked, and I thought I was Maradona. I could score from wherever. I just had an absolute purple patch, and it was lovely personally that it was the end of the season. I got the match ball, first time for that, never scored a hat-trick even in youth football, and it gave me a nice boost to go through and probably get a little bit more dedicated, a bit fitter throughout the close season to really attack the season after. I'm not sure whether it was the year after. I think it might have been a couple of years after that. We played West Ham in the 3rd round of the Cup. It was a strange story in as much that I volunteered to be the penalty taker probably about 4 games before the West Ham game. And they'd had a couple of lads missing and everything like that. And we hadn't had a game and everything like that. 1-0 down, 89th minute. We've got a penalty right in front of all the West Ham. I mean, I think there was about 11,500 there at Wisram Road, which was like capacity. And I'm sort of like, oh, great, we've got a penalty. Brilliant. Okay. Didn't even give it a thought. And then someone's throwing me the ball. And so I'm, oh my God. So that's literally probably my first penalty that I thankfully I scored. But it was my first professional penalty that I ever took, and thankfully it went in the back of the net.
I mean, one of the games, and I was just trying to find it to see if it was in your time when you was at there. I mean, one of the games that I always remember down at Orient was when we played Oldham in the FA Cup.
Yeah, no, I scored. Funny enough, I scored a penalty in the extra time for that as well.
I mean, probably for me, don't get me wrong, I haven't been to hundreds of games, but for me, it's still probably the best game of football I've seen.
Oh, that's nice of you.
I think it was an absolutely phenomenal. I remember going with my brother and my dad, and and literally, I mean, at the time we were the underdogs in that game, and literally with that, I think there was a couple of people and I know you've seen a lot of it now in professional football, but there was a couple of people went down with suspected chest issues, in the crowd,
Wow.
and then because I'm panicking because it's such a one scoring and one scoring, the goals going in everywhere, and
Yeah.
I'm screwing at my old man to calm down because of all the rest of it. And then I just remember winning the game and then racing home, and it was the main game on. I
That's
think
right.
it was Sports Night. I think when it then was it back in them days. I think it was Sports
And
Night.
like, with all due respect to Oldham, it probably doesn't sound as like sort of like, sort of as expansive or as it, sort of really how it should be. But Oldham, I think it might have been the
Top
year
division,
before.
weren't
They were in the top division, regular, sort of top, sort of right top 10, and I believe they were semi-finalists even in and around then.
Yeah.
So it was an unbelievable result, and it was, you're right. I think it was probably my last year of my first spell at Orient before I went to Plymouth, and it was with a whole group of new lads. They were a lot of youngsters, and I was probably like, middle age, shall we call it, at sort of 24, 25. Yeah, some great players, Danny Carter, Greg Berry, Kevin Nugent. It was lads that sort of like were just coming up and coming. Wayne Burnett, like sort of Adrian Whitbread, Chris Bart Williams. So, lads that all went on and played a massive part in good careers at championship levels.
And I say it was just one of those games that sort of sticks in your mind constantly. That was the game that for me that's always sort of is there, along with the 1989 Arsenal win at Anfield. But there we go. But I mean, according to what I've got in front of me, 243 appearances first time round for Orient, 55 goals.
Yeah.
So not a bad return on the goal scoring from centre midfield.
Yeah, I've lost you. Sorry, mate.
I was saying you did 55 goals in 243 appearances. It's not a bad returns on the goals front.
Yeah, no, that was anyone that's ever asked me about my career, really. I mean, like, I don't like to sort of like, give myself a big G up, and I don't think I was a, sort of particularly skillful player, but I did always have a knack to scoring goals. And that thankfully kept me going throughout the career, really.
So, I mean, since the end of season 92, you left Orient. I mean, was that hard? Was that your decision, to go to Plymouth, or was that just something you felt you needed a bit of a refresher?
A little bit, yeah. I'd been since I was 16. I was 24, 25. At 22, 23, I'd had an opportunity that fell flat on its face to go to Wimbledon. Obviously, I know they're defunct now, but they were a first division team at the time under Bobby Gould. That was all set, and the fee had been sorted out and everything like that, and then just didn't happen. I have mentioned it before, but it's boring. I'm not going to go into it again. And then, I think it came to the end of my contract. I just felt that it was time to see the big bad world, if you like, really. And I just thought, right, I had stalled on a couple of contracts over the years, but this time it was sort of really, I thought, no, I do want to spread my wings and just see what was out there. Thankfully, it was a really, really good move, because I went to an exceptional football club, like Leyton Orient was, but with a fan base that is just absolutely to die for. And I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of the area. I wasn't aware of anything else, and really, it was quite a surprise, probably from people looking outside, that I did go that far. But it was along with a few others, and it was a start of a 3-year journey that I sort of always treasure, really.
And of course, they had a very famous boss at the time, didn't they?
They did, yeah. And he got, he came in, Peter Shilton, that is. He came in, I believe, in the February, March, trying to keep them up. It didn't happen, so that was to keep them up into the Championship. So they went down to League One, but he got given quite a few quid to spend. So, probably people you may or may not know, but I mean, they were quite sort of renowned in lower league football. Your Warren Joyces, Paul Dalton, Keith Hill, Craig Skinner, Kevin Nugent, myself, Gary Paul. It was lads that had always, sort of quite done a good job in that lower leagues, and you could actually see why each and every one of them had been signed to push to get us back up into the Championship.
And we talked about your goal scoring and how you like doing you scoring the goals from midfield, but this was even better, 35 from 101.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just had a knack down there. As I say, really enjoyed my football down there. The first 2 years were superb. Second year in particular, I think I scored 23. I think I had about 19 by Christmas. So it was just, don't get me wrong. I've just said this to you, and I'm not, I certainly weren't the type of lad that was going past 4 people and putting it in the top end of the game. I'd get on the end of all scrappy things and whatever like that. And the football that was played that year, by the likes of Steve McCall and Paul Dalton and Martin Barlow and people like that, that was really where I got my goals from. And, it was nice that I finished it off. And, I know it's sometimes a bit unfair, but, I did get the sort of like the headlines, if you like. But, it was a glorious time to play and a great time, a great team to be playing in.
I mean, the fee here says it was £225,000. They got an absolute bargain, didn't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, they did, because in some ways, sort of, they got their money's worth in as much as the goals produced that I did. It don't always work out, because I'm sure we're going to go on to the Birmingham and they paid about the same amount and didn't get their value. So I think it's the chance you take, and the clubs take that chance. Sometimes you get some success and sometimes not.
But a player always, I suppose, becomes sort of like a hero in a club when you come on and score on your debut. But you scored in a 2-0 win against Wigan.
That's it. Yeah, no, I got down there and I got injured straight away. I mean, like, injuries are the bane of my career, but I got injured straight away along with Paul Dalton. I think Peter Shilton must have been scratching his head, really, because he's had 2 of the signings, and I think 3 of us were injured along with Steve McCall, and it was trying to get a team together and a settled team together. And I think Paul Dalton didn't start until like mid-November, and I was probably end of November, but managed to sort of get ourselves together, and got some, unfortunately, there was some poor results. Obviously, we didn't get ourselves in the playoffs or anything like that year. But there was enough to suggest that there was a tidy team coming. I know, we went up to West Brom and we done them 5-2, and they were title challengers at the time. So there were always good signs for us the following year, which obviously did produce a fantastic season.
Of course, it says here the record break, your highlight, one of the undisputed highlights of his Argyle career, was a record-breaking hat-trick in a fine 3-2 win at Stockport in December '93.
I know, and I never get any credit for that, because it was a 6-minute hat-trick, and I don't think anyone took any notice of it, because it was on a Friday night. I think there was a Premier League game being played, and it just sort of went up but yeah, it was. I think it was 6 minutes. I got it in. Yet again, just great play from other people, but being on the end of it. But I'll take the credit for doing that. But it was a fantastic result, because we were flying, but then so was Stockport. To go up there was a real unusual occurrence. I mean, they ended up getting into the playoff final themselves, but for us to win it and keep it down for them, it ended up 3-2. But they had enough chances, and it was a young lad in goal for us called Alan Nichols that had just took over from Peter Shilton. He was making tremendous saves. So yet again, team effort, but it was a good one individually.
It says here he was named in the PFA second division team of the year in 93, 94 as well.
Yeah, no, as I say, I've got it up here on the wall, and I'm really proud of that. I've got two of them, and one when I was at Orient, one I was at Plymouth. You know, I don't mean keep it good, but I think the fact that, you know, the goal scoring always does bring you as a highlight, especially being a midfield player, you know. But yeah, really proud of both of those medals, really, because it is from your peers, your people that you're playing against and everything like that. And, you know, that's sort of right up there with, you know, promotion medals on an individual taking.
And it says here became the chant down at home park was Super Stevie Castle.
With an accent, you got to remember that. We can't do that accent, and I'm not going to be disrespectful to down there, but there was a bit of an accent to it, and that went into that. But yeah, no, you know, I love the time down there. You know, we had 3 years. The third year weren't great. I got picked up an illness and couldn't shake it up until Christmas. But overall, it was a fantastic time. And yet again, it was a time when I thought after that it's time to move on. Hopefully, you know, sort of higher, and the move was to a higher club, but unfortunately it didn't quite work out how I really wanted it to.
But I mean, do you know there's two, should we sort of hashtag awards that you've supposedly actually won? Did you know those two awards? So according to this, in 2011, there was a poll taken of Plymouth fans, and yourself and Steve McCall were basically in the all-time Argyle 11.
Wow. Well, I know Steve McCall, I agree with 110%. What a fantastic footballer.
And then the other one, which was a 2014 Twitter poll, and I think this is probably maybe trumps this one a bit for me anyway. It says a Twitter poll in 2014 saw Steve Castle voted as Orient's greatest ever captain.
I did hear, and I weren't particularly on Twitter at the time, so you know, my nephew did tell me about it, and yeah, I mean, both of the accolades I'm particularly, you know, really proud of, and it's nice that you've mentioned it. For me to be a little bit bashful, but it doesn't come naturally to myself. But no, I mean, yeah, it's just a case with myself, and you know, I just give me all, and I, you know, sort of with the captaincy, I think, you know, sort of it was just something that I naturally did. I was a captain at all the clubs bar Birmingham, and it's something that I revelled in, really.
So I mean, you said you left Plymouth to go a little bit higher, to go into Birmingham City, and you know, played 23 times, scoring once. But I mean, was it not, by the way you've spoken, it wasn't necessarily your best move? No,
I don't regret it, because I don't regret anything that happened in my career, really. It's done for a reason. But I went up there probably thinking that I would be a regular. As you say, the money that was spent was still quite a lot of money, and it wasn't tuppence. So I thought, you know, that would probably give me that little bit that I could feel my feet and get into, you know, sort of a fantastic club's regular team. It just didn't work out that way. You know, I mean, you know, I love Barry Fry to pieces, and I can't slaughter him too much, because I ended up working for another 3 years at Peterborough with him, you know. But Barry signed an awful lot of players. He signed an awful lot of players in midfield, and you know, I found it difficult. You know, I think that sort of like that impressive tag, that sort of like silky skills that are just sort of going to make you stand out from other one. I didn't possess any of that. I possessed, you know, sort of hard work, organisation, and the odd goal. And it was just really sort of, I found it really difficult to, you know, sort of get settled in too much, because we never knew the team from week to week, because there was just so many players in and around, very good footballers. And yeah, it was one of them. I mean, as I say, no blame apportioned to Barry, really. You know, did he know when he signed me what he really wanted me to do? Probably not. But, I think he did that with a lot. And I think what he did was grab a lot of very, very good footballers and basically sort of like went, right, go on, fight it out for the 11 places. And there was no particular, if I'm going to have a bit of a criticism, organisation and tactics weren't there. It was just pure ability and lads, just off of the top of my head, like sort of Jonathan Hunt and like Steve Claridge, they were sort of a little bit more individual. So they shone a little bit more for me. The team player, which I would have probably classed myself, probably just sort of got swallowed up really. And like maybe looked at probably with a little bit more higher regard from other pros, but probably not the coaching staff and the lads that were picking the team.
Mm. And of course, you had a couple of loans out into Gillingham and back to Orient for a few games, and then basically went, as you said, joined Barry Fry at Peterborough United. I mean, how did that one come about?
Well, I mean, like sort of, it wasn't all doom and gloom. I mean, I had a season with Barry trying to get in the team, didn't get in the team. One thing about Barry that I do love is that, he will actually, sort of look you in the eye and sort of go, look, I think I made a mistake. I'm going to give you another opportunity. And he did that against Wolves. I had an opportunity. He got the sack the following week. So I thought I'd nailed it with him. And then I had Trevor Francis to deal with, which was a whole new lot of issues. Yet again, a whole new lot of players. But it did stay with me in the fact that Barry, sort of did have enough about him to sort of go, look, I think I should have given you a little bit more of a go. It didn't really quite work out. And I felt that was an opportunity that I thought, right, okay, you know what I'm about. You know that I'm not a silky smooth sort of like footballer, technically gifted, blah, 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 but I'll give you everything. And that's what he said to me. And he asked me to be player coach. And I ended up the 3 years there doing pretty much every role from first team coach to reserve team to just in and around sort of coaching, always having someone there as well. Quite rightly, I was just mainly a player, and I played most of the 3 years that I was there. And we got the last year we got promoted, another really big highlight in my career.
I mean, 105 games, 20 goals, so still a good return.
No, as I say, it wasn't sort of like, the old legs weren't going around as quick as possible. It was what was I, between 31 and 33, I believe I was. So it wasn't, it wasn't the Steve Castle of Leyton Orient, or it wasn't Steve Castle of Plymouth, but, it obviously served a purpose. And I do feel that probably that, leadership skills, if you like, or that sort of like willingness to win rather than, actually running around like an headless chicken, it probably served its purpose. And, I thankfully had the little knack of still scoring the odd goal. So, it obviously worked well for us to get us promoted.
A bit like Steven Gerrard, weren't you, with these goals, banging them in?
Well, no, I'm certainly not as good as him. I ain't got his bank account, that's for certain. But, no, it was one of them in the lower leagues, like sort of, it's as you can hear from me. I mean, I'm not one of these. I'm quite a realist in regards to my abilities. I was very, very good at what I did in the lower leagues, and I was managing to score the goals and like, sort of that. Was I good enough for the championship? Only probably we'll never know really, but certainly wouldn't been able to handle the quality that was in the Premier League at the time. So I knew where I was, but it's a nice compliment all the same.
So I mean, from Peterborough United, I mean, then back to the Mighty O's for a season. What was that like going back there?
It was great. It was great, and that's probably one of my biggest disappointments in my career. I actually got I'd done my cartilage on a playoff final at Wembley, and I stayed on, which I shouldn't have stayed on, but I did to the end, and we won. But then I had to have a knee operation because it just wasn't right, and I got it infected. Cut a long story short, I wasn't aware that it was infected. had to have about 5 or 6 operations on the knee until we found out. I'd signed for Orient by then. Every time I was playing, the knee was blowing up. Never really got an opportunity to play. And you know, it really does put a little bit of a taint on, you know, what I, you know, would perceive my local, you know, club. And it was just such a shame that, you know, sort of I couldn't contribute just that little bit more. But it is what it is.
And then on to Stevenage for 6 games in 2001, 2002, and then into sort of what we class for all non-league, I suppose, who's St Albans City, know, 2002, 2004, 49 games for them.
Yeah. No, it literally was one of them. A pal of mine, Gary Paul, I was at Plymouth and Birmingham with, and he knew the manager. Was I ready to pack up? Probably financially, I could have probably done with, you know, sort of a little bit of money, which, you know, that's what it wasn't an awful lot, because I just thought I want to play. No particular responsibilities, but I think probably that leadership and maybe that me sort of like, I don't know, busy, I don't know, getting myself involved in things. But I started off playing and then, you know, sort of evolved into being assistant manager. And unfortunately, the lad, Steve Cook, he was, you know, sort of relinquished of his responsibilities, and they asked me to be the manager.
And I mean, there was that. So your first sort of taste of non-league management then down at St Albans. But I mean, what was that like? What was that like? Sort of stepping over the line from being a player, you know, into being the boss. Was that difficult to transition?
Yeah, very difficult. You know, real sort of like, you know, there was no money to be spent. You know, it was hard. Anyone that's going to go into management are probably going to, you know, their first couple of jobs are never going to be ideal. You know, what manager goes in to a club that's doing well? It doesn't happen. You know, that's why they go in. But for me, was I ready? No. You know, could I have done with a little bit more preparation? No. Yes, sorry. You know, but it is what it is. You take it. You try and do your best. You know, I've been lucky enough to stay in management for quite a while now. I can look back on it now and think what a bad manager I was and what I was doing, what I wasn't doing. There was some good parts, but, you know, I probably reflected on, you know, sort of the negatives too much, because that's how I am. But, you know, it was very, very hard work. I mean, at a good level as well. You know, I mean, we were in the Conference South. I did get them promoted from, you know, sort of the Ryman League into the Conference South via a playoff. So that's something I can probably take away from the first one. But yeah, I mean, like sort of the end of the day, there's no secret in football, whether it be non-league management or professional. You do need the resources, you need good players, and at the time that wasn't available to me in a big enough area.
So I mean, left St Albans in 2011 to go to Takeley.
Yeah.
I mean, was that another sort of culture shock going to Takeley from?
Yeah, it was. It was just an unusual one, really. I you know, on a personal note, we just had twins, my wife and I, and it was hard work, as you can imagine, with also another little who was 3. So, you know, 3 kids, all under 5, and especially the fact that it was twins. I just thought, right, you know, I don't want to pack up. I don't want to not be a manager, but probably the best thing that I can do is keep it local. And there was an opportunity, and I thought, right, I'll take it, and I loved it. It was step 5. You know, I've really learned an awful lot, because that was something where I really cut my teeth. There were certain things that I did there that I was allowed to do. And it's probably took me forward and probably give myself that little bit of a encouragement to sort of like, one, be a better football manager, and two, just to push through the steps and get to, you know, sort of a good level in non-league football once again.
So I mean, we've taken. I mean, you moved on then to Royston, of course, where you are now.
Yeah.
In 2013. I mean, you know, almost 10 years now been there. I mean, is it a good fit for Steve Castle?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, it's a good fit for most people, and I think most lads that come up, you know, they don't initially sort of probably think, you know, it might be a little bit too much travelling, it might be just a little bit too far away from London or their places but once they get up there, once they realise how much they're getting looked after, once they realise what other clubs, how they don't look after players, you know, what they've got. And you know, we've had that, you know, sort of being said to me on various occasions over the 10 years that, you know, it's a proper non-league football club that knows where it's at, you know, always looking to be more ambitious and try and get up to higher levels, but we're always doing it in the right way. I'm really proud of the football club and everything that's been around it.
I mean, what's been your highlights at Royston so far?
Well, we've had an awful lot. I mean, like, sort of, I took over from a lad called Paul Atfield who had he'd got a tremendous amount of success getting them up from step 5 to step 4. You know, sort of he got that winning mentality, and I'd like to think that sort of to a degree we carried it on. Took us a couple of years, it took us 3 years in total to probably go up from step 4 to step 3. You know, but they were successful years. You know, we didn't win the playoff games, but we ended up second 2 years in a row. With a little bit more luck, we could have gone up automatically.
How frustrating is that, Steve? I mean, my club is, you know, the Harlow. I mean, you know, we had 3 years in the playoffs. You know, 1 year we even had over 100 points, 100 games, finished second, and then got beaten in the semi-final of the playoffs. You know, how frustrating is that as a manager when you finish second twice in the league and still don't manage to get through those playoffs?
Well, do you know what? We were only talking about this only a couple of days ago with me coaches up at Royston, and that it's the one big thing that I've got a gripe about non-league football. You know, the fact that it seems that the playoffs just seem to want to be out the way as quick as possible, and you know, it's not always fair. You know, what I do like is the conference and how they're doing it. You know, with the one automatic, second and third, you know, pretty much get a bye into the semi-finals, and then, you know, there's more teams that can be involved in it. Mm-hmm. But if you go into our level, as in step 4, step 3, step 4, what we're talking about in regards to that, it literally, you end up second and you end up 5th. Yes, you've got a home tie. Great, no problems. But it's the Tuesday after you've played a game. And I was only explaining to one of my coaches up at where I run my academy at St Albans, and, like, you know, tell them all the yesteryear stories and the art stories. But we said, you know, we had 1 year that we were second, but we had to go for it on the Saturday of the last game of the season to get up automatically. We went for it, we drew the game, so we didn't go up automatically, but we had gone for it. We played Rushden and Diamonds, and they were 5th, and they rested all their team, so they absolutely run us off the park on the Tuesday because we were knackered and they were fresh. And I just feel that, you know, sort of when you're saying, you know, with Harlow, 100 points, there needs to be some sort of reward if they're going to be second and third, not just a home tie, you know. And as I say, I think the conference and the conference North and South have got it nailed. I think that's a little bit better. But what I would also say is, don't have it straight after the season's finished. You know, give lads a week. You know, I know why chairmen don't do it. But I think if you went to the chairman and sort of said, look, it's going to be another week after, budget for it, budget for the whole season. But it just...
I think the other thing for me with these playoffs as well is how you get to that sort of stage where clubs in there also sort of what's the dual sign players from the higher level, and then you get into those playoffs, and all of a sudden, say for instance we're playing yourselves, all of a sudden you're playing teams from step 2, so players from step 2, step 1, or whatever else. You've got a dual registration. Come on, this can't be right. Surely, that you should be playing with the players that you've been playing with all season, and not just cherry picking the best players to come in and play in a semi-final. No,
I agree. I mean, as I say, you don't need looking at the non-league playoffs from step 2 downwards. I think they've got that now, but step 3, step 4, step 5, and make it a little bit more, it can take. It needs to be a little bit more of an event. And
it's an easy change as well, isn't it? It's not as if it's something
I think so.
Rewriting. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I mean, the proof's in the pudding. In as I say, how the conference North, South, and National do it. I think it gives it a fairer chance. And let's be honest, if you've ended up second and third, you should have that little edge that you have got a chance of probably getting promoted. But that's my view. I could be wrong, and I understand that chairman want the season's finished for the pitches or whatever. But I just think it'd be more entertaining and a fairer way of doing things.
I agree with you 100% agree. I mean, but this year's been successful for Royston, League Cup winners.
Yeah, no, in a different way. I mean, we've sort of. We're second in the form table going into the end of the season, which is brilliant. Really enjoyed that, but we've been crap for sort of certain parts of the season, which means we're not in the playoffs. I think had we managed to just get in the playoffs, as I just said to you, our form guide was excellent. Probably would have been a great time for us to get in and possibly get promoted out of it, but. On the flip side of that, yes, we won the League Cup and, beat a very, very good Taunton team, 7-0 over aggregate. So, yeah, there's bits that we can be proud of. Probably we've been looking at the last 2 or 3 years of building on step 3, and our biggest disappointment really was the pandemic, which was like everybody else really, but we were not only, sort of quarter finalists that year in the FA Trophy, we were second with 2 games in hand and really looking like we could push on to win it when obviously, circumstances prevailed and we had to cut short the league, So that's been a bit of a blow because we've kept the same lads. Same lads got us there, but, 2 or 3 years on, it's worked out that some of these lads are, not quite at the levels that we had them 2 or 3 years ago. So it's took a little bit of adjusting, but, I think we're back on track. And as I say, the form guide is showing that we are. I'm really looking at probably pushing on and making a good fist of it for next season.
I was going to ask that. I mean, next season then, is it to push on and get into those playoffs or possibly even, take the title next year?
It's a strong league. It's a strong league. I think, before I say that, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to anyone at Royston Town, but, we've got some big clubs in our league and our level. You just look at your Tamworths and Stourbridges, Nuneatons, the followings they have, the backing they get. We're not in that class yet. We are Royston Town. We are a town that's just north of Hertfordshire, and like we're sort of like our fan base is middle of the road in regards to the size of other clubs, but we're always one of them that would be fighting the cause. We're playing in a Birmingham league, and we always have that. Sort of them and us mentality, if you like. They don't like coming down to us, and we don't like particularly going up to them. But you know, we've applied ourselves very, very well over the last 2 or 3 weeks against the teams that are in the playoffs. So it does give us a little bit of a G up and just think, right, okay, if we can make sure that we can, you know, keep that run of results going for next season and hit the ground running. You know, sort of, it's an open one because, you know, I'm saying that we'll improve, but I'm sure that the other teams will as well. And I think personally that it's probably the strongest Step 3 league. But having said that, I have seen teams like, you know, Bishop Stortford and Hornchurch and Cheshunt, and I've seen teams in the Southern, you know, and like if you could to put all of those together, I would say most of those teams I've just mentioned would survive in the Conference North and South. So it's just about getting up there.
And you just said about those teams in the Isthmian Prem. I mean, you look at that. You know, I do some stuff with Enfield Town and
yeah, Enfield. Well, yeah, sorry, I forgot about it.
You know, and you look at that the playoffs there, and they're all local sides. You know, we've got Hornchurch. Well, it looks like Hornchurch against Enfield. It looks like Bishop Stortford against Cheshunt. So you've got the laugh at the moment down this area is it's not going to be much travelling. So you haven't got to be travelling all the way to Bognor Regis or something like that on a Tuesday night. At least they're all nice and local.
Well, you want them. You still want them in the league. That's the thing, don't you?
Yeah, but it's all good fun. But I mean, listen, Steve, it's been well. Before we finish, I suppose one question I'd ask you in your league: how good have Banbury been this year? That they've done what they've done.
You can't take anything away from them. They've gone about their business very, very well. They absolutely battered us with good football and positive football at home. We were never in the game. We were in the game up there, but you know, sort of the lad or the group of staff up there have got some young lads there that they play decent enough football. Now, whether that would be complicit to Conference North, Conference South, wherever they end up, but no, they're a good team. They fully deserved it. I honestly thought that there was a couple of teams better than them, but since we've played them, I'm sort of thinking to myself, no, you know, I mean, you know, Banbury, I'm saying we're second in the table. You know, this is the end of the season and they've won the league and they're still top of the table there. So he's done a really, really good job there. Can't knock the guy. You know, I wish him all the best because, you know, sort of with I think, you know, it's one of them. It's sort of not certainly not a local derby, but it's not a Midland, if you like. It's Oxford way. They run it the right way, and like how they go about their business is very positive.
Absolutely. Listen, Steve, the last hour has been absolutely fantastic. I can't even tell you how good the last hour has been talking to you. It's been absolutely superb. Fantastic to actually see one of my dad's heroes as well in the flesh as well. And many a times I've seen you play down at Orient and given us some great times down there. So a massive thank you for joining us tonight. And I think I've got the pleasure, hopefully still got the pleasure with you meeting with you again for the D&K show on Monday night as well. And until next show of My Life in Football, a massive thank you, of course, to Steve Castle and also, of course, to Royston, and wishing them all the very, very best for the last game of the season this weekend, and of course also for the season next year as well. But me and Steve will be back for My Life in Football with another special guest next week. Good night.
Thank you.